We are continuing our studies of poetry as sound with one more. Sorry, I have to change the share. With one more go at the matters of meter and rhythm stuff. This what we call scanning poetry. That you guys have done very well. I'm really pleased with how well the class you guys in general are doing. My sense is that is also shared. The faculty spoke over the last couple of days, so you guys are a terrific group, and you should commend yourselves. So far, about halfway through the semester, this is almost exactly the halfway point. Even though, in terms of material in most classes, including this one, we're a little bit past half the material. So you guys are doing well. Almost everyone is keeping up with the homework, the assignments, and that's good. And I assume that and the readings in the other classes and the more challenging 106 assignments that you all have. So this week we're not going to quite take the load off just yet. We still got a ways to go in terms of mastering a few more skills. We were going to start today with we're going to make a transition in the middle of this week to a new unit within the general rubric, the general portion of our semester dedicated to the elements and the devices or the elements of formal verse. We'll be talking actually about something called form, meaning sonnets. That's how we're going to get into it, and we'll get into more complicated forms next week. But today we're going to continue with our study of sound. We're going to do something, as I told you, a little bit easier for the most of today. We'll talk about alliteration and the repetition of specific syllables. But I want to conclude our scansion. We're going to talk about my Papa's Waltz and the poems that you guys scanned for your homework. Some of you also did the optional part. We're going to go right into. So here's our plan for today. We're going to go right back into randomized breakout rooms because I think that that's the best way for you to talk about it. And actually, I think there's even a benefit to being in breakout rooms virtually rather than if you were in small groups in classrooms, since that they're somewhat more intimate. You don't have to hear everyone who's around you. You know, you can share your misgivings if you have some frustrations. Somehow, online communication makes that a little bit easier. I have as of now the submission system is closed, and just about I think everyone who wants to get credit for the course has submitted. So you can bring those up now on your computer, share them with each other. I'm going to be also, I looked through a few of them, the people who really submitted early. I got back to some of you. I'll be looking through all of them, but you can bring them up on your computer. And this is one of your last chance, not the last chance. You could always tell me. Some of you have written me. Some of you, it's fine if you emailed it, but I prefer if it's on, obviously if it's on, almost everyone submitted it through Moodle, which is what I requested because Moodle makes an automatic notation. And this is one of the last stops, not the very last stop, to tell people I have absolutely no idea. Most of you who wrote me that I'm completely freaking out, I have no idea what's going on. I wrote to you privately. I hope that level of tension is coming down. That was our Aretha song for today. Let the load off. Don't be freaked out about this. It is a skill, and I don't know. I say this every year. You guys can tell me if this is not helpful, but I always sense that using the children's books, telling you, preaching over and over that I'm not a preacher's son, but keep preaching repeatedly that this is something your ear always hears, and giving you those examples, using the names to demonstrate how your ear computes it regularly. Hopefully that gives you some sense that although it's kind of technical, I find it more annoying and kind of irritating. It's very technical, but fundamentally not that hard. We're just using, and this is actually what we're going to do a lot for this. We did a little bit last week with the tenor and vehicle 2 weeks ago. We're continuing to do it now with the sound, with these iambs and trochees. You just have to learn this artificial vocabulary that maps onto a natural phenomenon that you are always doing. So we're going to break out into breakout rooms just a little bit. This way, you guys can have an opportunity to share with everyone. Bring up your submissions if you have it. Don't be shy. No one got it exactly right. No one got 100%. Some people are getting it very well, which is impressive. And that, as I told you last week, that is not exclusively native English speakers. Some people get it if they are, if this is a second or third language for them. It also is not all the Americans or the Brits or you name it. Different people hear different things. Some people get it very well, and some people are struggling, and that also includes some native English speakers as well as, of course, foreign speakers. So to do this, so Zara, how did I do this? To record our own attendance. You don't have to record attendance in this class. I know who's here. I know who's participating, and you. So I saw you ask that, Zara, on the WhatsApp group. I'll just answer for everyone here. I am not taking specific attendance. I'm tracking participation. I know generally who's here. Zoom actually can notate that for me, and I also use the chat, which I save every time, and I take notes. Apropos that, by the way, at the end of this week, there'll be this. We're at the middle part of the semester. You will have the second participation, the second quarter participation uploaded. I'll probably do it over the weekend. Cool. So now you've had 3 more homeworks, and you will also have had another participation. Or 2 more homeworks, whatever it is. It's equal to the first part. That's it. Okay, guys. Now someone told me I have to do the share screen before I do the breakout room. So if anybody knows how to do that, you can tell me. Who was the questioner?
Me.
Questioner was
Yuval.
Shoshi. Oh, Yuval chair. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, was Shakespeare really like thinking to himself, I'm going to write an iambic pentameter and it's going to sound really great? Or,
I love these questions. First of all, let me answer you straight up. First of all, what do you think, Yuval, and anybody else?
He didn't.
Who's the no? The no
It just
from
sounded
is?
great and...
You're answering Yuval. Yuval, you're the one answering that? You think no?
Yeah.
Are there anybody else want to answer?
I think yes.
Yes. I think he definitely.
That video that we watched, I thought explained it very well about
Which one? We watched a lot of videos. Oh, the heartbeat.
The heartbeat one. I thought that was really intelligent, a neat way to look at it. The amount of breath space that is required in iambic pentameter is exactly, according to the person who did the video, I can't remember his name, but he said, aside from the heartbeat rhythm, the amount of breath space that you need to complete that sentence is about all you have on stage. If Shakespeare was writing for the stage and if someone was performing this, the poetry or whatever his written word was, you have to inhale and, support your breath. And that's about all you can say in one exhale of breath. So I think that there's definitely something intentional to that.
Yep. Are there any other quick points? Excellent. Thank you, Tamar. And I agree with that. There's a lot of Shakespeare. We don't know much about it. When you start saying about the heart, I think about that in my very romantic sense of, it's the heart feeling. That's not at all Shakespeare. Shakespeare was actually pretty, we don't know much about, we don't know whether he was a romantic or not. We know he was incredibly astute about the human feelings. But what we do know about him, and this is actually one of the only things we know about him, because there's so little we actually know about Shakespeare, we know he was a master dramatist, actor, playwright, director. And so anything that has to do with acting, putting things on the stage, and that's what Tamar really did say, that it allows for the effective delivery of the lines. And remember, there is no amplification, there are no microphones. So you have to take in a lot of breath to say double, double, right? Any line of Shakespeare. And those, and the prosody, the meter is the means of delivering those lines. And even as I suggested to you, and I learned this also from watching online YouTube things and lectures that I heard in graduate school, that the meter is the stage direction. I think I said all that. But Sarah says yes. Also, you probably began just having fun. In terms of having fun, let's just complicate that. Yes, it is fun, absolutely. But what he really did was, if you want to know, so Yuval, you can argue this. I think that's pretty clear that it is intentional. I love the question because it leads us to a point we're going to get to after our midterm. I know there's an annoying and utterly terrifying prospect of a test coming up in just a few more weeks, in about 2-3 more weeks here. And we're going to do that. So I'm just mentioning now because I will give you, of course, ample, and we're going to talk, I will talk for 15 minutes straight, probably on Wednesday, about what the midterm will entail. But after that, we're going to have a whole week talking about this idea, because it's a question that, especially undergraduates, and I assume you value that you and most people here are undergraduates, what did the poet know about their own work? Is this all intentional? It's a question that always comes up. When Keats does this, is he purposefully doing? We're going to talk about it today with Ted Ruthke. Is he purposefully doing something with the meter that substantiates Papa's Waltz, which is one of the two poems we're talking about today. So I love that question because it is a fundamental one. With Shakespeare,
Can I say something, Dr. Feldman?
Yeah.
I was reading, you talked about Shakespeare before. I was reading As You Like It for a different course, and I kept looking for meter. It was very hard for me to focus on the text because I kept looking for the meter, and most of it was iambic. And it was just crazy genius that he's managing to find the meter, and it was just great.
Yeah, but excellent that you're doing that. As I hope you're also getting the sense, as Professor Kohlbrenner and both I and all the other faculty want you to actually also note the themes in the text and the language of it, but excellent also to note the meter and the prosody of it. It is so pervasive, Yuval Chetty and everyone else, that there's no way that this is by chance. You are getting to the stage where you, as Noah is pointing out, you have to sort of look at this, but you're starting to note it without, almost instinctively, intuitively. That is certainly the way that someone like Shakespeare does. It almost happens automatically. I know a few people like this also who are so practiced in meter that they can just do it without thinking. Rappers do it without thinking. And what the specific, and with this we're going to go into our breakout rooms, what is the specific history of it? So to bore you at 10:15 on a Monday morning, is that the history of iambic pentameter begins because they were trying to recreate, the Renaissance poets, the Renaissance writers of the generation before Shakespeare, were trying to recreate, I can't remember the names, Johnson, I guess, Ben Johnson, I always get confused. Professor Kohlbrenner will slay me for Ben Johnson, Samuel, but they were trying to recreate, certainly, Sydney was certainly trying, Sydney, but, no, you guys don't know Sydney yet. That is the Renaissance class, but Noah's in the Renaissance class. So so Sydney and others were trying to recreate the classical meters of Latin and Greek, which do not work in English. They were trying to create the hexameters of Homer and use the Homeric rhythms and the classical rhythms of Virgil. They do not work in English because it is a different language. In the second generation of the Renaissance, they found out, we can use iambs and trochees, which work much, much better in English because it is an accentual language where we use accent, lighting, all these words that I'm using, which we are communicating in English. English is an accentual language, not a sequential language. And so one of Shakespeare's greatest mentors and predecessors, his influences, someone named Christopher Marlowe, started writing in very, very fixed iambic pentameter. That was then changed by Shakespeare and others and lesser known people in his generation to blank verse, which is generally unrhymed iambic pentameter, which is what most of the plays are written in, with substantial variance, with using interruptions very, very frequently, so that the iambic pentameter isn't always the same thing, but rather has, once in a while, a variant to draw your attention. And that is how that's the fun that he was having by taking something that was a relatively new, an invention of the previous several decades, and making it something that served him in a way that no one had done before. And then it goes on and on and on, and you'll see, and in your course of your next 2 years, you will see how Milton adapts this, and then the Romantic poets adapt it. And then on Wednesday, we will have Professor Shulak with us in this class at 10:30 at this time, on Wednesday, talking about the use of meter and prosody in our contemporary world, with the poetry that you may wish to write and the poetry that's been written now. And we'll have a few examples as we shift. I have purposely not asked you to read ahead this week because I want you to focus on the scansion and the prosody, but there will be some more poems that I will present that Professor Shulak will mention on Wednesday when she comes to talk to us about about the role of meter in contemporary, all this formal stuff, all these classical elements and their role in poetry today. Different languages absolutely use different meters. You can feel that already, Zara, in a way that I can't in Arabic and in all the different languages. Okay, we're going to breakout rooms. Bring out your homework, share with your friends, and then we will go over it, and then we'll talk about the poems for today. That is our plan. And I also want to get to alliteration and Hamilton at around 10:40. See you guys in about 10 minutes. We're coming back here, and we will reconvene. So this is a chance to just make sure you are not flailing and feeling like you are drowning. You're not the only one if you feel like you are having trouble, but I don't want anyone to feel like they are falling under the waves here. See you in a few minutes. Hopefully this will put everyone in breakout rooms of 4 people. And the breakout rooms are going to close, by the way, in 10 minutes automatically. Okay. Okay, hi Tamar. And then anybody watching, I'm just going to put this on pause because I realize there's no point of doing this now if we have the breakout rooms in the middle of the session. And I hopefully will remember to resume the recording when the main session resumes in about, well, for us, it's about 8 minutes, but it'll be instantaneous for you. Okay, so we are resuming. Everyone is coming back, I hope. And well, I hope they are coming back. Yep, they are. And we are joining back together. I hope that was helpful to hear from each other. I hear there's still some issues, but every time you do this, hopefully it gets a little easier. It's not the be-all and end-all of becoming a student of English literature or understanding poetry, but it is a skill. It does exist, and hopefully the more often you do it, the easier it gets. I'm muting everyone, okay? So we're joining back together. We're going to go, I'll just give a few more seconds for everyone to come back into the main room after having been in breakout rooms. And I joined a few of you. I didn't get to everyone. So we got a packed agenda for our next 40 minutes or so, half hour. And we're going to go over it now. I really do hope, and I suspect that it actually is getting easier for people. And no one has it exactly perfect. I don't have it exactly perfect, but you guys are generally in excellent position. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at, I have 2 examples. They aren't exactly, but they aren't 100%, but they're like 98%. Let me see if I still have the camera here. Good. So I can look at the other, I'm going to share screen with you guys. All right. What we're doing now is, so once more, let me just say it one more time because a few more people just joined. You are doing fine. Some people are doing more fine than others. Some people get it a little more easily, and the help you get from each other is probably, as I'm sorry to say, but I don't think it's a bad thing, is more helpful than what I can give you, since you know where you're coming from. You are on the same learning curve, each and every one of you. I'm now going to share 2 different examples in each of the 2 different methods. I gave people the option of doing this homework either just on the computer screen or by hand and then taking a picture and sending it in. So some people did one, some people did the other. So Sarah, you can take a look at this and everyone can check it out. And if you want an official one, I also asked people to do, I'm not going over now the the Robert Frost. But last week in groups, we started with Robert Frost, and then I gave a link to Robert Frost. There's a whole website of someone who loves Robert Frost and has scanned most of his poetry. So the Frost winter, whatever it's called, snow dusting, winter dusting, that was there. And you can find, and I will link to this. So if it's helpful, there is all of Shakespeare scanned on multiple websites. The entirety of Shakespeare, all the dramas, all the sonnets, everything he ever wrote, scanned for you by different scholars. There are some variations, and some not 100% is the same. I would say about 98% of it is uniform. Let's take a look at this. And if you miss one stress on the midterm, I am not going to take it off for you. There is actually a website, by the way, that some of you may have found. I have assigned it in past years, but I'm not doing so anymore. From the University of Virginia, an excellent university, their English department created an online program that will check your scansion for you. However, it's a computer, and therefore, if you do not get it 100% right, it marks it as wrong. So I'm happy to send you the link to that. I think it's called Prosody, something that at University of Virginia. You can check it out. It will let you. It gives you practice of like 100 different poems, but I get them wrong a lot because if you're missing one beat, or if you're missing the foot for one thing, it's a computer. It will mark it wrong. There's no person there. Let's take a look at two different versions. This one is a hand created one. So I'm not gonna. You can say if you want to identify this as yours, you can. I'm not going to say who it is, but this person is doing very well. The whisk, and also this person, by the way, forgot to do in I just realized now, forgot to write in those vertical lines. I will try to do it myself. However, the stress is all correct. There we go. The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy. And notice that a small boy dizzy. Notice that here there is an extra.
I understand
beat.
the part about adding in the lines.
That's fine, no problem. But I hung on like death. Notice here, by the way. So here, this is correct. There is an extra beat here at the end there. The dizzy. It's broken up. The foot is broken up. There is an extra beat there, as we saw in Lama Lama and elsewhere. Such waltzing, and we're going to get very quickly into a second into the was easy. Is this by chance? No, because it's done again here. Once more, here is an extra beat. We romped until the pans slid from the kitch. And here is another example of how the word is split up. Here, once more, we have to divide the word. The word itself, kitchen, the word is a trochee. So here, I hope that everyone is with us. We've learned this, and you've learned this very well. So I give you guys a lot of credit. This is not stuff that I learned in a week. It took me at least years probably to learn this stuff. But though the word trochee, though the word kitchen itself is a trochee, meaning the way you say the word kitchen in English is kitchen, just as you would say it in German, Küche, or in French, cuisine. Well, I guess in cuisine is the stress is on the second one. Mitbach, however, the stress is on the second one. So in English, the word kitchen is a trochee. But in this poem, using it in this line, it scans like this. Unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. So kitchen actually falls into an iambic pattern. What is this whole poem? We don't need to do this whole poem. Here's the hardest word in the whole poem. It's the only trisyllabic word in the entire poem. My mother's countenance. So countenance is part of two different beats itself. Count, and you would break it up right here. It's hard for me to do it. But countenance, same thing with mother. The word mother itself, once more, like kitchen, it is a trochee. But it is used here in an iambic trimeter. All these are iambic trimeters. One thing I want to get to now. So and same thing with unfrown. Unfrown itself is an iamb. Okay, I want to get to the 2 points here. First of all, these 3 points. Let me say 4 points. Sorry. 1, very simple, is the first point I've just said. Just because a word itself is trochaic, iambic, doesn't mean that the entire poem is that way. The text can use words in a way that makes sense for it. The meter, we're trying to figure out the meter of the entire text, not of individual words. figuring out for individual words is just a tool for us. That's point one. Point two, there are extra beats here, occasionally, here and here, not in every line, but it also repeats here again, right? And it also is here. So we can see that there are extra beats, it is part of a pattern. It is in the alternating stanzas 1 and 3, have extra unstressed syllables at the end of lines 2 and 4 of that stanzas. It is part of a pattern. It is not a mistake. The poet is doing it. Finally, that was point 2. And it still leaves the prevailing, the dominant meter. So that is point 2. Now these are both subtle points. You guys have figured them out in 1 week. That is awesome. And now in point number 3. Point 3 is an interesting one. You beat time on my head. This student wrote, there are different ways to read this word. This line 13 of the poem, line 1 of what we call stanza 4, the final stanza. You beat time on my head. That is a really hard line to scan. If I asked you only to scan this final stanza, that would be mean, unfair of me. If I asked you just to scan this one line, that would be nearly impossible. Sorry, someone is calling the phone and I forgot to put it on. Silent. And I have to switch now to the other camera to tell this guy not to call me. And the point I want to make here is that in this line, we were here. You beat time on my head. This difficult line. There is significance to that line. It is not random that this line doesn't seem to have one clear way of scanning it. You beat time on my head. Yes, it couldn't be the way that the entire poem is scanned, but it sounds a little different. Maybe it's you beat time. Maybe the stress should be on you. Or, as this student suggests as an alternative, unstressed, unstressed, stressed. You beat time on my head. Now, it could be two anapests, the way that this student is scanning it. Why? Why is this poem significant? I'm going to connect that to the last point of why the iambic trimeter, which is what we have here, trimeter, iam, 3 iams, and now we get to the idea of some sense. So the last 2 points of you beat time on my head, and now we get to discussion of the poem in general, how this all makes sense as a text. We have a few minutes to discuss this. Now, the poem, I'm going to go out of it because this can become confusing to look at, and I'm just going to look at it in the way that we ordinarily look at our poems without all these marks on it. You beat time on my head. The trimeter, or the trimeter is really how I'm supposed to say it, but I have a bad habit of calling it a trimeter. How the meter, this iambic meter, makes meaning, or how it is indicative, illuminating for this text. And I asked you, and I gave you guys a hint as I sent you off the other day, about why this meter, why this sound pattern, this arranged pattern of stressed and unstressed in this time. And I said this also, this was in WhatsApp that I wrote to you guys about, to those of you who are in the WhatsApp group, most of you, that you can pay attention to, why this all makes sense. Now let's remember what a waltz is. Then we'll talk about the poem in general, and then we'll hopefully have a grasp of why that difficult line 13 is such a hard one to scan. That line that says, you beat time on my head. Now, remember what a waltz is. Let's take a look for a second at a waltz, just so we can remember. A waltz is this stately kind of dance, very fancy. Here's a waltz done. There are waltzing competitions. Apparently, it was a thing. Okay, let's turn this down. Now in until we have an answer, however, I'm going to keep that on in the background. Stop the share for a second, but hopefully you guys can continue to hear it. Why? What's going on in this poem? So can anyone have a grasp of what is happening here in this poem? I don't know who's talking. It's another one of my many. Oh, Spotify. Thank you, Spotify. I left it open. Okay. Thank you for telling us who was giving us that advertisement. So what is happening in this poem? Let's go now to the usual share screen. What is happening in this poem? What is happening with this waltz? I'm going to leave it on. I'm going to go to, now let's look at the text. And I want to get to this idea of what the meter might have to do with the poem. That difficult line, you beat time on my head. I'll leave the chat open and people want to hazard an answer there. Good. Sarah's got a very good opening idea. He's creating a rhythm of dance, this waltz of a family relationship through the words of meter. Yes, he's talking about my papa's waltz. That somehow the relationship of the family is a kind of waltz. Let's expand on that. Specifically talking about the relationship with his father. The trimeter functions as the beats of a waltz. Very good. And here I can't see all of you right now because I'm sharing the screen, but this is the idea of a waltz. As some of you are probably much better dancers. I know that some of you are better. It is, yes, the three-step dance. Thank you. The three-step dance. The poem sounds like an actual waltz. What is for those of you who really are musical or were trained in on a musical instrument, you know that a waltz is 3/4 time. And you can hear it. Let's go back to that video. Now they're in between sections here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And the dance steps are also 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A waltz has the time signature, or it has the rhythm, the meter of a waltz. So Sarah also notes that last stanza is a double entendre, and this was also, by the way, the student noted this as well. This was not, she was aware of it too. That there is this idea of you beat time on my head, so beating time as if you are a conductor. What is the relationship though that is being described in this poem? So I'm going to turn this off so that we can concentrate for a second. I always like to listen to music in the background, of different kinds, as you guys probably know at this point. What is the relationship being described? What is the double entendre of you beat time on my head, not just beating time? And often in poems, and I urge you to note this, poems that are themselves metered, classically rhythmic, when they talk about feet time, beating time, anything of that nature, you should always see a double entendre, a double meaning behind that, an extra, as we might say, a double valence. Let me just give you that word so you can recognize the word. Valence means another layer of meaning. So there's another valence behind, another aspect when they use words like beat or beats, feet, time. Okay, so it might not just be the feet attached to your legs, but the feet of a poem. What is the relationship? Let's get this, and then we'll move on. Physical abuse. So Shoshi, you want to talk about that out loud? It's a very difficult poem to actually discuss. Someone a few weeks ago said, get a happier poem. This is not a happy poem, or at least to me, it's not.
I don't think it's an abuse. It's just a child that tries to help his drunk dad, because I think the fact that he named it My Papa's Waltz, it means that it happens all the time, and he gets home drunk every time, and the mother is tired of it already. Because we know,
yeah, but maybe because he's drunk,
if it was like, if it happened like for the first time, the mother wouldn't be like tired of it already. So it means that it happened a few times before, or it happens all the time. So the mother is exhausted of this situation, and the child is just trying to help his dad all the time too. That's how
So Shoshi, a very charitable reading. Yes, the father does seem to be drunk, the whiskey, and you're saying that,
That,
you know,
sorry, that was Danielle, not me.
Yeah,
oh, that was, which Danielle was that? Danielle Balua?
was.
Balua, thank you. Okay, sorry, I show she is
I was
highlighted.
actually saying the opposite, that
Okay.
he is being physical. I mean, he could be, because also it says like my right ear scraped a buckle. That could also, you know, mean that the father's being abusive.
Yes. So, and there's no, and again, this is in some ways a heartbreaking poem that the father, as Tamara is saying, and I think this was implicit in what Danielle Balou was saying, the child is very sympathetic and affectionate towards the father, clinging to the father in the last line, clinging to your shirt. There is this kind of desire to, there is language here of love, hung on, held, and clinging to your shirt.
And it's like something positive. He sees it like a dance.
There's language there of positive in terms of the love the love the father has for the love the child has for the father. However, there is something very troubling. I think Shoshi's right about this, and this was also in some of these other comments. But there are two different ways. I hear there are two different groups. We can say there's Devorah and Danielle see one way. Chana, let's hear what you have to say. But then there's also the very troubling side of it. Chana, go ahead.
I don't think it has to be love words from the son to his father, like the expressions. It could be as he is depending on him, like his parents is his whole world. And so I'm not sure it's 100% from love, than more depending on his father.
So just a child who's living in a house with possibly addiction. There is drinking, at least. We don't know if the father's complete alcoholic, but there is certainly drinking, and there is a strong hint, although it is not named. There is a metonymic reference to abuse. By metonym, it is not necessarily metaphor. There might be another metaphor about the abuse. That's the one that we're talking around, but we'll mention it in a second. But they're talking about the hand that holds the wrist at the beginning of stanza 3. Battery, was battered on one knuckle. So battered means it's hidden. So but battery is a fancy way of saying abuse. Assault. My right ear scraped a buckle. Well, it sounds, it could be playful and fun, the way that some of you are discussing it, but others of you, Yuval, Tamar, Shoshi, are saying that, what's that belt being used for? A belt buckle. So that's the metonymic, the imagery of assault, of child abuse of children. What is
I wanted to say something.
Yeah, let me go. Because I'm in share, I have to go into this different mode to see who you are. This is Emunah, please. Yes.
For me, I kind of feel like it's the steps of the dance, or leading up to the steps being the meter that's repeating itself. It's kind of leading up to something, because at first there's just the alcohol, like in the first stanza, the whiskey on your breath can make it small. There's no mention of like violence or anything that's more than just the alcohol. And then it kind of builds up to that. We romped until the pants slid from the kitchen shelf. My mother's could not unfound itself. And then the hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. Like, it could be like the beginning, the dad was only drunk, but then he got that things escalated, like steps leading up to at the end of the dance. That could be like he throws the girl in the air or something. So it's kind of leading up to something. It's building up.
Excellent.
Process.
So it begins somewhat subtly, but I agree with what you are saying, that the steps lead up to it, and think about the symbolism behind the steps of the dance. Waltzing is about taking these 3 steps. And the progressive element of violence, from going from just having a drink here and there, romping around, waltzing as if it's fun, to then, as Sarah and many of you are saying, and you're saying, Emunah, and others, to actually being the step to real abuse, the actual beating, that is a beating that the child is receiving, not just a fun romp. But of course, the kid can't really tell the difference. It's from a child's perspective. Of course, this poem is written by an adult, but My Papa's Waltz, it is with all the sophistication of meter rhythm. And there's also, of course, rhyme, which I just want to mention quickly. This is a very easy idea for you to figure out. Dizzy, easy, pans, continent, shelf, wrist, mist, buckle, knuckle, head, bed, dirt, shirt. Some of these other words that are a little harder, I want to introduce a new word here. I just want to mention it. Pans, countenance. Those words are not a perfect rhyme. When we have a rhyme like that, we're going to call that in this class a slant rhyme. So others might call it a half rhyme, off rhyme. These are terms for the same thing. Just to be consistent, I'm going to call it a slant rhyme. Pans, countenance. What constitutes a half rhyme or slant off rhyme, what I call a slant rhyme, is when the consonants, so the consonants here are the consonant sound, the NS, NSC, where we in English you pronounce those the same, when either the consonants or the vowels are the same, but not both. A perfect rhyme, a full rhyme, these are also all the same thing. A perfect rhyme and a full rhyme, which basically is just rhyme, general sense. Dirt and shirt is a classic example, where both the consonants and the vowel sound, so the I of dirt and shirt, or the E sound of head and bed, as well as the consonant of D and T, all that maps up. In a slant rhyme, not so hard to grasp, only one of them. It sounds like a bad rhyme, but if there's still some element that it's being used, and clearly there is, because every line of this poem follows a specific scheme, the scheme being what we call AB, 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 meaning that everything, a fancy way of saying the same thing is interlocking rhyme, because it is A and B go together. In the next stanza, C and D and C and D go together. So interlocking rhyme, or AB, AB. Next stanza would be C, D, C, D. That is the way to mark this. We'll see a few more examples of that coming up soon. So obviously, in a poem like this, with all these metrical, the prosody is being used. There is also, by the way, there is some alliteration, but I'm going to use that. I'm going to show you that in Hamilton. It nonetheless is conveying, with all the sophistication of formal, even though this is a relatively recent poem, a formal verse, it is explaining the kind of confusion, the dizziness to use, and it's always good when you have an argument to use language from the text to make that argument. The dizziness, the confusion of the child's perspective in the swirl of emotions that an abused child feels, especially a boy, for a father, because of that gender element. The mother is clearly outside of it. My mother's countenance cannot overcome her. She's clearly unhappy. There's the pans there, and then what is the proof that there is an aspect of abuse here? The language, the vocabulary that we have invoked about abuse, and the metaphor then that we need to address is that abuse, as someone said this at the very beginning, I forgot who it was, the very first comment about this poem when I opened it up, is that the metaphor is that a waltz, let me put it this way, that abuse, which is the tenor, is like a waltz or a dance. That is the vehicle. That is a very arresting, that is a very striking metaphor. It is not one a comparison one would ordinarily make. That makes it possibly a successful metaphor. A metaphor in the sense that is not a cliche. In what way at all is it like a dance, a very stately dance, a courtly dance, as we saw, kind of a ballroom, old-fashioned dance. It could have been this kind of idea of it being mixed up or stuck to each other. The whole idea of trying to write a formal poem about this relationship is based on this idea that maybe there's something maybe there is some idea behind it. There's some kind of, as we say in Hebrew, there's some kind of structure of emotion behind it. I like that idea very much, Danielle, that it rises and falls. We're kind of bound together. We come together and go apart. Those of you like Danielle who really know how to dance, maybe can say more about why he chose this idea of a dance. But he certainly suffers from it. Waltzing to bed, he sees it as love, but love expressed as violence. All that is here. there are definitely, I mean, many of you will have experiences that I don't have of how to, and that Rothke might have, of how to illuminate this text. My point is simply this. Tracing the meter is it's constitutive of the poem. It cannot be divorced from the meter. To understand this poem, you have to scan it. You cannot have a grasp of this poem and what it is trying to convey without a grasp of meter. And now that you guys have it, you can read much more deeply. Okay, it might be. I actually don't know if it's Charizah. It probably sounds correct, but I had to take those tests also in high school, but I forgot what they were all called. Yofi, I'm going to move on now to, I'm going to look at just the other poems very quickly. And that's why beating time is that idea. It's where these double ideas come together. So that's the iambic trimeter, the beating time. Now to look at how this could also be done just using the online, I invited you to do this. This is also correct. The hand that held my wrist, you beat time on my head. That was choosing the conventional. He clasps the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely hands. Once more, crooked is a crooked itself as an individual isolated word. It is a trochee. I hope this is boring when I say it now, but it is being used in iambic tetrameter. By the way, it's not tetrameter. So someone was saying that. There's no N in tetrameter. Iambic tetrameter, close to the sun in lonely lands, ringed. This line can be done in a different way. It could be ringed. I forgot if the other person did it this way. Ringed. Yep. This is correct. Ringed with the azure world he stands. So that's probably more correct. It doesn't change the entire poem from being iambic. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls. And like, there's also two ways to do the end here. And like a thunderbolt. It could be and like a thunderbolt. It could be a stress on both. It is a disruption because there is a kind of pause in your reading. And like a thunderbolt he falls.
Excuse me, Dr. Feldman. I see that you're
sharing. Oh, sorry. Yeah, where am I? I'm not in the right. Yeah, I'm choosing. I'm gonna go. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Sorry. Let me just do desktop. Thank you. So I was just showing. He clasped the crag with crooked hands. Here is the other way to do this. The other way to have done the whiskey, the Papa's Waltz. I invited people to do this. This is also correct. This student just chose to do you beat time on my head in the conventional way, maintaining the prevailing meter. And then at the eagle, there's a variant way of doing ringed with, the third line, the last line of the first stanza. It could also be done this way, the way that this student did it, ringed with the azure world he stands. And then the last line also, there are different ways to do the final line, and like a thunderbolt, and like a thunderbolt, could be a double stress there. Those are the two lines where there is a kind of pause. It is the moment of reflecting on that eagle and what that metaphorical eagle represents. That time of year thou mayest behold. This is Sonnet 73, which is almost entirely conventionally iambic pentameter. In me thou seest the twilight of such day, as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, that second self that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed. Now there is another way to do that line also, as the deathbed. It's possibly that as the deathbed, rather than deathbed. There is a variant which has a moment of shuddering of, let me see if the other student did it, as the deathbed. Yep, so here is correct. As the deathbed. It changes up the meter in that line 11, because there's a moment of the pall, the shadow that is gathering over this poem, as the deathbed, whereon it must expire. That changes the meter, because it also changes the mood. Consumed with that which it was nourished by, this thou perceivest which makes thy love more strong, to love that well, which thou must leave ere long, before long. Iambic pentameter, line 11 is a regular correct. And this is almost all correct, but I would never mark this wrong. This is also another way to do it. And both are perfectly fine, even if in line 11, this line, there is one simple stress. That is two stresses that are wrong, 1 foot. Okay, let's do something else, because this is taxing the brain. Let's finish today with something a little bit more fun. Let me stop the share. we're going to now talk about, we talked a little bit about rhyme. I'm going to go over today. I hope you guys don't mind, because I want to give you guys something fun to do. And let's talk about other games you could play with sound. And there's one more little part of it of sound, puns, that I will talk about also on Wednesday when we address, and there will be a fair amount of new poems. You can look at them in advance. You don't have to. I'm really wanting you guys to feel comfortable with this scansion, but I have a bunch of sonnets that we're going to be talking about on Wednesday. And the last part of sound is punning. The last part that will be left over after today. Now, alliteration, internal rhymes, and games that can be played with sound. This is not intellectually difficult stuff, and it is something we can use a fun example to illustrate. In the, I forget what year, 2015, breakout Broadway musical, also a hip-hop work, something that some of you know, not all of you know, I can see from your faces, the musical work called Hamilton by a young hip-hop genius, phenom, called, the author's name and lyricist, the creator's name is called Lin-Manuel Miranda. So it's a man, Lin-Manuel Miranda. So Miranda created, it's a Broadway musical of a completely different sort. He had done a few actually in this form, and when I lived in America in graduate school, I was fortunate to see some of the early ones, and I also did see this, which I was very lucky to see on a trip back. A work about actually the founding fathers of the United States, including one who was didn't become president, called Alexander Hamilton, and using hip hop and all the full toolkit of prosody. It's all there. Everything you can imagine with sound is in this work, which some of you will know, others don't, but we will all become familiar over the next 10 minutes or so with some of these aspects. One of the fastest songs. So there are two. I'm going to use examples from two songs. One is called "Guns and Ships." It is the fastest track in this play, and we're going to listen to it, and then we'll point out some of these things of alliteration and internal rhyme, slant rhyme. It's all there. So some of the words will be new. Let me make sure I did share sound also. What I will say is that I'm going to use one video. We're going to watch one video, but we're going to listen to the sound of another. So bear with me. And this is, I'll just show you very quickly, the lyrics that we're going to be listening to. They'll be too fast to read because they're done by this superhuman performer. And then we're going to talk about it. Okay, you can't hear me so well, but these are the lyrics. This is the introduction. I want you to notice these things: shower, superpower, volunteer, emerge victorious from a quagmire, hire, weapon, henchman, Frenchman, and then it'll get even faster. I'm taking the horse by the reins, making redcoats redder with bloodstains. That's what's called alliteration. This is the idea. All the R sound. Reins making redcoats redder with bloodstains. And we're never going to make it stop till I make them drop, burn them up, and scatter their remains. There's a lot of internal rhyme. Let's listen to it, and then we can talk about it. So here's what we're going to watch. And then let me turn on the sound first, and then we're going to watch this one.
How does a ragtag volunteer army in need of a shower somehow defeat a global superpower? How do we emerge victorious from the quagmire? Leave the battlefield waving Betsy Ross's flag higher? Yo, turns out we have a secret weapon, an immigrant you know and love who's unafraid to step in. He's constantly confusing, confounding the British henchmen. Everyone give it up for America's favorite fighting Frenchman! I'm taking this horse by the reins, making red coats weather with blood stains. And I'm never gonna stop until I make them drop, burn them up and scatter the remains down. Watch me engaging them, escaping them and raising them out. I go to France for more fun. I come back with more guns and ships, and so their balance shifts.
We rendezvous with Rochambeau, consolidate their gifts.
We can end this war in Yorktown, cut them off at sea, but for this to succeed, there's someone else we need.
I know.
So he knows what to do in the trench, ingenuitive and fluent in French, I mean. So you're gonna have to use them eventually. What's he gonna do on the bench, I mean? No one has more resilience or matches my practical, tactical brilliance. You want to fight for your land back?
I need my right-hand man back.
Yeah, get your right-hand man back. You know you gotta get your right-hand man back. I mean, you gotta put some thought into the letter, but the sooner the better to get your right-hand man back.
Alexander Hamilton, troops are waiting in the field for you. If you join us right now, together we can turn the tide. Oh, Alexander Hamilton, I have soldiers that will yield for you. If we manage to get this right, they'll surrender my early life. The world will never be the same. Alexander.
Not bad, very catchy. Okay, let's. I'm stopping the share just, and then we're gonna go back in. So. It happens to be a lot of fun to listen to these things. I'm turning off the share of the sound. Let's go back in and look at the words. How is all this put together? This is written by someone, this guy Lin-Manuel Miranda, who knows everything about meter. You can, by the way, if you want to hear it just for a second, if you want to go back to that track, everything in that part where it's supposed like George Washington speaking is all done. It's all exactly on the beat. It is perfectly metered. At least that last part is. As for the very fast hip hop part, spoken by or sung by the character who is Lafayette, let me give you the terms and then we can just look at the examples and you guys can even mention examples. Alliteration. Which one? Alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of.
The first line is engage in escape.
Yeah, that's actually something else. Yeah, technically that's assonance. You're ahead of me. Assonance is repetition of vowel sounds. So
he's constantly confusing, confounding the British Lynchman.
That is a classic example of alliteration. So you do have these links that are on the page. I'm constantly, where is it? Here it is. He's constantly confusing, confounding the British henchman. That is a classic example of consonant repetition. Alliteration generally is, by the way, at the beginning of a word. There's technically a different term called consonants, when it is the repetition of consonant clusters in the middle of a word. But to make it easy, it is alliteration. Okay. Words in multiple rhyme schemes. There are many rhyme schemes that map onto each other. So yes, Devora.
Sorry. With he's constantly confusing, confounding the British henchman. Is this not alliteration and consonants? Because there's a repetition of the off sound.
Yes. Well seen. I was going to use another example, but yes, it is also here. He is also used the ah. It is, and this shows how Miranda, the composer, uses everything. He's got meter, he's got alliteration, he's got rhyme, and he's also in these same lines using assonance. A clearer example, because what is assonance here is the ah. He's constantly confusing, confounding the British henchman. Everyone give it up for the America's favorite fighting Frenchman, the f in the next line. And also when you say everyone, it's kind of you kind of make that into an F sound also. And even the the give it up. Everyone give it up for America's favorite fighting Frenchman, the f. And then the way to say that line, and the guy who does this, he's like a super athlete of superhero of hip hop. I forgot the guy's name, David Diggs, right? He has a whole hip hop group that just specializes in this kind of extreme form of rap. So the way to say that line is to emphasize the p. The P is where you grab your sound, and everyone give it up, and then you bring in some air, and then you can say the rest of the line. Give it up for America's favorite fighting Frenchman, the f. Also alliteration. Now the multiple rhyme schemes, yes. Now in. Here you can see an immigrant you know who loves is unafraid to step in. Henchman, Frenchman, all rhyme, except that henchman and Frenchman are also double rhymes. A double rhyme, also sometimes called if it's done in a specific way, a feminine rhyme. Nothing to do with actually like masculine men or woman gendered, but when the emphasis step in, all three of those words, step in, henchman, Frenchman, the stress is not on the final beat. A feminine rhyme is a double rhyme where the stress is not on the final beat. So the stress is on French, hench, step. So that's called just a more complicated form of rhyme. It is a double rhyme, meaning step, empin, henchman, Frenchman, all those. It's not just the last, it's not just dirt, shirt, Kurt, the way that we saw in a more simple rhyme, but it is a double rhyme. Everyone, now where's the escapin? Escapin is a more clear example of watch me engaging them, escaping them, enraging them. That is a clear example right here of assonance. The the repetition of the E sound. Repetition of the E sound here is classic assonance. Assonance, not an ass. Assonance is repetition of the vowel sound, the E. Lafayette, and it also bleeds it, by the way, into the choruses, the chorus here, Lafayette, Then he goes on, I go to France more funds, FFF, France more funds, Lafayette. I come back with more guns and ships, and so the balance shifts. This is a half rhyme right here, because P and FT are very close sounds, and I guess you could say the S makes it a full rhyme, but it's just an unusual rhyme. He's using the I sound of ips and shifts. Everything is the same. It's almost the same word, but just he shifted P to F. And the rendezvous with Rochambeau, consolidate their gifts. Using these, I mean, who would think to, like, you have to be crazy to think that you can work that into a hip app. But those, you got another long French word to go along with Rochambeau. We rendezvous with Rochambeau. We rendezvous with Rochambeau. Two dactyls that are being used in a complicated line here. It's not exactly the same as staccato, but no, Danielle. We rendezvous with Rochambeau, consolidate their gifts. Crazy line, but it works. He's got three trisyllabic words. Three words, rendezvous, Rochambeau, consolidate. I guess that's four syllables, consolidate. And it works. The RR of rendezvous, Rochambeau, consolidate their gifts, further continues the this is a perfect rhyme, but it's continuing the I here of ships, shifts, gifts, and it goes on. Let's go to another one. So it's just fun to listen to this. There is a ton of fluent in French, right? Ingenuitive and fluent in French. Fluent in French. More. There is more. Both alliteration and assonance. Fluent in French. Ingenuitive and fluent French. And he also does a ton of. He does this other idea that I don't teach. You're not responsible to know, but this idea of even at the end of words, he's using the same consonant sounds. That's not exactly the same as alliteration, but it's a close cousin. Trench, French, mean, and then Hamilton, right? The N sound, that is bench. And if you were wondering whether this is done intentionally, you can see it continues here. Bench, I mean. Okay. He thought about these a lot. The composer definitely considered this a lot. Let's look at one more. This is one of the more famous, maybe the most famous song track from this work of Hamilton. It's called My Shot. Now, My Shot is kind of like the coming out song. It's the development song for the main character, for the protagonist, whose name is, again, Alexander Hamilton. And he states his purpose. It's like a manifesto. And there's a lot of also... And the way that is done is not only in the lyrics and the staging of it, but also in the prosody, the sound elements of this song. He starts by saying, I'm not throwing my shot, but then there's a lot that happens here that is much more sophisticated on the level of prosody that now you guys can understand. Even those of you who've been listening to this and have heard it dozens of times, now you can see new things. There's something here called brag and dag. Brag and dag, well, that's not the end of a line. What's a line? What is a rhyme doing there in the middle of a line? That's called internal rhyme. It can be both the last line and a middle line, but when there is a rhyme that is rhyming not with another line, but within the same line, not that hard, just a new word you guys got to pick up. It's called internal rhyme. Here it's amaze and astonish. There's some alliteration, assonance there as well. I probably shouldn't brag, but dag, I am amazed and astonished. The problem is I got a lot of brains, but no polish. Astonish and polish. That is another one of these feminine rhymes, a double rhyme with the accent not on the final polish, astonish. I got a holler. I got a holler. There's more assonance. I got a holler just to be heard. It's a really hard sound to make. The H, especially when you're speaking quickly or on a stage, with every word. Heard word, that's another version of internal rhyme. I drop knowledge. Holler, drop, there's a lot of that ongoing the I got a lot of brains, no polish. Holler, drop, knowledge. And he's rhyming. What does knowledge here rhyme with? I got a holler just be heard. With every word, I drop knowledge. This is a crazy rhyme. What? Nope, it's with polish and astonish. Knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. Crazy rhyme, but it works. I amaze and astonish, polish, knowledge, knowledge. It's not a perfect rhyme. You can call it a slant rhyme if you want, but it works. Let's listen to what, if you're wondering if he thought about all this, let's listen to the composer, whose name is, again, Miranda. We'll hear a short clip of he'll describe this all in an interview. Let's listen to just a minute or two, and we'll be almost done in just another second or two. This is just, again, fun, but it's also, we are learning these terms. They're not hard ones to figure out. Spot in the Caribbean, but Providence is Providence. Absolutely is. Well seen, Muhammad. Okay. I'll find you the clip here. Here's what this is the transcript of what we're about to listen to. So let me stop this again, and then I will share with you the sound. And this is the last thing we're doing for today.
The cast recording of Hamilton.
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. And yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. I'ma get a scholarship to King's College. I probably shouldn't brag, but dag, I'm amazed and astonished. The problem is I got a lot of brains, but no polish. I gotta holler just to be heard. With every word I drop knowledge. I'm a diamond in the rough, a shining piece of coal, trying to reach my goal. My power of speech, unimpeachable. Only 19, but my mind is older. These New York City streets get colder. I shoulder every burden, every disadvantage I've learned to manage. I don't have a gun to brandish. I walk these streets famished. The plan is to fan this spark into a flame. But damn, it's getting dark, so let me spell out the name. I am the A-L-E-X-A-N-D-E-R. We are meant to be a colony that runs independent.
That's Lin-Manuel Miranda from his cast recording of Hamilton. So you are so incredible at these like intricate rhymes that you do in this show. How do you assemble all these intricately placed rhymes?
For me, the fun of writing my shot was it's Hamilton's declaration of purpose, and I wanted to demonstrate his intellect and his ambition, not just in what he was saying, but in the way he was saying it. So prior to his arrival and singing my shot, the other guys in that bar, right, Lawrence, Mulligan, and Lafayette, are rhyming at the end of the line. It's, I'm John Lawrence in the place to be, 2 pints of sand, Adams, but I'm working on 3. We rhyme at the end of the line. And then here comes Hamilton, and suddenly you're getting a lot of internal assonance and a lot of internal rhyming, and not content to just rhyme at the end of the line, but, have these big pun-esque lyrics. I know the action in the street is exciting, but Jesus, between all the bleeding and fighting, I've been reading and writing. So they're intricately tied together. And if you consider that Hamilton is delivering this in real time, suddenly you're like, whoa, this is the greatest freestyler who ever lived. So that was the fun in constructing that. And it was many days and months of work to sort of make his lyrics just that much more intricate than everybody else.
Okay. So there's an example of someone doing the stitching and unstitching. There's an example of someone doing the stitching and unstitching that we read about a month ago, a little more than a month ago, but here in within the last decade, and still creating a global phenomenon. You can hear how the prosody is crucial for him, crucial for this text, and it enriches also your interpretation of it. How it has not just the oral quality, the fun in your ear, candy for your ear, but also actual depth, some substantive element of how we could interpret it. That's it for today, guys. So we will pick up on Wednesday. We have a little bit more to do just with puns, and we will make the transition to form when we read about sonnets. On Wednesday, we'll welcome back Professor Shulak for a little bit to talk about, just as I demonstrated just now with Lin-Manuel Miranda. He will not be joining us, but we will have our own in-house poet and expert talking about the same idea of how prosody can contribute to your own kind of work, your own work in writing, and your own work as interpreters and readers of literature. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.